You cannot outperform your way out of a wilderness situation. You can't solve it with harder work or better data or more evidence. The tools that got you here don't work here. And once you accept that, the question changes. It stops being, how do I fix this? And it becomes, who am I when I can't fix this?
This show is powered by Others Over Self. Hit that subscribe button to keep training your brain.
From Others Over Self, it's Hardcore and At Ease, a show about people who are keeping their edge without going over the edge. I'm host Shelly Rood. Today we tackle what happens when the system itself becomes the threat. What it means to hold your tactical center when the institution you served with integrity turns its investigation toward you. You'll discover the one question that separates leaders who survive false accusation from those it quietly destroys, and the surprisingly small moment that told me the wilderness was winning. This is Hardcore and At Ease. You did everything right. You showed up, you performed, you kept your standards when other people around you were letting theirs slip. You were the person in that room that people could count on. You did the thing correctly, not just when someone was watching, but because that's who you are. And then someone accused you of doing something you didn't do. Maybe it was a colleague who pointed a finger at you to protect themselves. Maybe it was a rumor that had just your name on it. Maybe, and this is the one I want to spend time on today, it was the institution itself. A formal process, a procedure that was designed to find wrongdoing and somehow landed on you. Here's what nobody tells you about that moment. The instinct is to fight, to prove it, to pull out your record and your scores, your reputation, all the evidence that says this is not who I am, and the brutal reality of false accusation, especially institutional false accusation, is that the evidence doesn't always move the needle. You can be believed in the room and still lose the war. You can perform at 100% and still be quietly dismantled. You can tell the truth and still watch it not matter. This episode is not about innocence. Both of the stories I'm going to tell you today involve people who believed me. That's not what this is about. This is about what happens to your identity as a leader while you're waiting for the truth to catch up, and whether you come out the other side still recognizing yourself. Because that is the question that people in leadership development aren't really asking. We talk about bouncing back from failure. We talk about resilience. We talk about grit. But we don't talk about what it actually costs to carry a false accusation at full performance. We don't talk about that slow hollowing out that happens when you're expected to wear the mask every single day with no end in sight. And that's what we're getting into today. Fort Huachuca, Arizona, 2014, an intelligence officer course. There was a female soldier in our class who was having an affair with another classmate. She was married. The situation was an open secret. They drove together everywhere, ate meals together everywhere. They were inseparable in a way that nobody missed. I noticed it. I gave it almost no thought. It wasn't my business, and I had enough of my own to manage. One day, her world came apart. The affair had been found out, and she was facing dismissal from the course, and possibly worse when she got back to her unit. An instructor pulled me out of class and sat me across from her at a table. She looked like a person in a storm. Her arms were crossed, her face was strained, physically writhing in her seat. My heart genuinely broke for her. Whatever the circumstances, I didn't wish that on anyone. And then the instructor began explaining that a classmate had come forward to report the affair. And before he could finish the sentence, she slammed her hands on the table, came to her feet, and screamed across at me, "And I know it was you." I felt heat move from the top of my head down across my shoulders. I held her gaze, and I said calmly, "No. Me? No, it wasn't me." The instructor confirmed it directly to her face. in that room. It was not me. He had the information. He had verified it. And he was telling her the truth with full authority. It was not Shelly Rood. She refused to believe it. She sat back down and she kept going. She knew, she was certain the evidence in the room did not move her 1 inch. I sat there side-eyeing the instructor while he let her finish. And when it was over and I walked out of the room, I filed the whole thing away with one single thought. The truth prevailed in that room, and it did not prevail in her mind, and there was nothing left to do about that. I want you to hold that thought, because that story is the small version of what I'm about to tell you. One person, one false perception, locked and loaded and immune to evidence. Now scale that up. Remove the one person, replace them with a process. Replace the angry soldier with an institution. And that's where it gets really interesting. I'm going to show you how to identify wilderness terrain when it's happening to you, the kind that swallows high performers whole, so that you can keep your standards and your identity intact and come out the other side still recognizing yourself. A different time, but the same location, an intelligence officer course at Fort Huachuca. We had an instructor who was the real thing. He invested in us beyond what the course required. We had extra study sessions, direct mentorship. It was the kind of attention that genuinely moves performance. Our class was so sharp. We studied hard. We executed well. And at the end of it, we had the grades to show for it. And then it started. Other instructors who had not taught us, began raising questions about how well our class had performed. The whisper turned into a formal accusation, and our instructor was accused of cheating. They said that he had given us the answers. They said that he compromised the integrity of the course. And when an instructor is accused of cheating, the students who benefit also become targets. Now, I didn't know any of this at the time. I simply performed well in my 2-week course. I went home for a break, and I came back. And then it was all out of the bag. Where was our instructor? He was gone. Our class had been split up, divvied up into these other classes with different instructors. And on the second day back, I was pulled aside and told that I was under formal investigation for plagiarism. Now, I want you to think about what that means in a military course environment. This was not a conversation. This wasn't, we're going to look into some things. This was a formal investigation with a formal finding already taking shape. And the finding was that I could not graduate regardless of my performance. Even if they found that I did not commit plagiarism, the scores didn't matter. The work didn't matter. The outcome was already being written. And then, and this is the part that I want you to hear, I was told to carry on as normal. Tell no one. Attend every class. Complete every assignment. Perform at the standard. Wear the uniform. Show up on time like a good officer does. Do the work while they figured out what they were going to do with me. I want to describe what that actually feels like. You become a machine, and not in the good way, not in this high performance, locked in, mission focused kind of machine that I'm typically known for being. You become a soulless machine. You go through the motions with absolutely nothing behind them. You say the right things. You're in the right place at the right time, in the right uniform most of the time. You're doing the right work. And inside, there is nothing. It's not anger. It's not hope. It's not even grief, really. It's just this flatness, a wanting to disappear, a quiet daily question of, does any of this matter if the outcome is already decided? Because that's the thing about institutional accusation. You are expected to keep performing at the same level for an institution that has already quietly removed you from the outcome. Your excellence has been decoupled from your future, and every day you suit up knowing that, and you spend a little more of yourself. Near the end of this 2-week stretch, my battle buddy picked me up for class. It was our standing arrangement. It's the same we did every morning. I picked up my bag. I went down 3 flights of stairs, walked across 100-degree weather to his car, and I pulled open the passenger door, and he looked back at me, and he was wearing civvies. I had come down in the wrong uniform. Now, for anyone who hasn't served, Understand what this means. I'm the person who gets the small things right. This is not ego. This is just my record. The details are my things. That's my superpower. The uniform's not something that I get wrong. And I had just gotten it wrong. And it was going to cost me 10 minutes that I didn't have. And I was nearing the end of my 2 weeks, having to wear this mask that was getting heavier and heavier every single day. And I was probably going to have to retake the course anyway, if they even let me come back. And if I did somehow get cleared, they were going to weigh my reentry against my first round of scores. And I stood there with the car door open, and I wanted to go back upstairs and not come back out. There was no dramatic moment here. I was not in a crisis. It was just a uniform, and that's what put me over the edge. A simple thing that I had gotten wrong that proved to me that the wilderness was winning. My battle buddy sat in that car and made eye contact with me as soon as I opened that door. I dropped my bags straight to the ground, looked at him and said, "I can't do this." He looked right at me and said, "Yes, you can." He got out of his car and the two of us walked up 3 flights of stairs. He stood in the hallway while I changed in my apartment. And without another word, I walked down the stairs, we got in the car, and he took me to class. That man does not know to this day how much those 3 words meant in that moment. It was true that I felt that I couldn't do it. And it was true that he knew that I could. What I just described in both of those situations is not a performance problem. It's not a resilience problem. It's not even a fairness problem, though it's certainly some of that. This is a wilderness situation, and those require a completely different response. The wilderness of life cannot be taught. It can only be experienced. You didn't sign up for it. You didn't aim for it. It's not a destination. It's not an achievement. It's what happens to you on the way to somewhere else. You may not know how you got there. You will absolutely not find it in a training manual. And that last part is the whole point. Wilderness situations are unwinnable scenarios where the standard playbook does not apply. It's where the map ends and you're still expected to keep moving. And the worst thing you can do in wilderness is try to solve it with tools that were built for a totally different kind of terrain. So here's how you know if that's where you are. There's 5 markers, and here's your rule. If at least 3 of these are true, you're not failing, you are in the wilderness. Marker number 1, no map. There is no procedure for clearing your name inside someone else's mind. There's no regulation that governs an investigation that outlasts the course that it's investigating. There's no HR protocol, no chain of command process. There's no form you can fill out that clears a false perception once it's been locked in. The institution has processes for guilt. It does not have processes for innocence. Marker number 2 of this being wilderness, no training manual. Nobody trained you for what it feels like to be formally investigated while ordered to perform normally. There is no field manual for how to stay mentally intact while being quietly dismantled. Your entire training has prepared you to execute, perform, to produce results under pressure. But not like this. None of it is covered here. You are genuinely in unmapped territory. Marker number 3 of the wilderness here, the double bind. Defend yourself and you look guilty. Because why would an innocent person need to defend themselves so hard? If you stay quiet, you look guilty. Because why would an innocent person have nothing to say? If you push back on the institution, now you're difficult. If you accept the process without question, now you've implicitly accepted the frame. Every exit here is blocked. That is the signature of a double bind. The 4th marker of the wilderness, success metrics collapse. Your entire operating system is built on a foundational belief. If I do excellent work, excellent outcomes will follow. Wilderness breaks that contract. My scores didn't clear me. The work I had done, work that was genuinely strong, had been decoupled from my future by the investigation. The thing that you have always been able to rely on, it stops working. And that's the moment that hollowing out begins. And marker number 5 of the wilderness is moral dissonance. You believed in the institution. You operated inside it with integrity, with commitment, with your full self. You held up your end, and now the institution, the same one that gave you opportunity, is the thing coming after you. The gap between what you believed about the system and what the system is currently doing to you, it creates a kind of internal dissonance that is genuinely destabilizing. It doesn't just hurt, it makes you question the foundation. If at least 3 of these are true, no map, no training manual, double bind, success metrics collapse, moral dissonance. You are not failing. You, my friend, are in the wilderness. We're shifting a lot of our teaching over the coming months to the wilderness. I want you to write down these 5 things, take a screenshot, and send it to someone who needs it. Us being able to name this terrain matters because wilderness situations require terrain-based navigation, not a standard fix. You cannot outperform your way out of a wilderness situation. You can't solve it with harder work or better data or more evidence. The tools that got you here don't work here. And once you accept that, the question changes. It stops being, how do I fix this? And it becomes, who am I when I can't fix this? That is the tactical center question. That is where your identity actually lives. That's the depth of the work that we do. And that's what we're navigating next. I want to be clear about what I'm not giving you here. I'm not giving you a fix. There is no 5-step process for clearing your name in someone else's mind. There's no protocol for making the investigation go faster or the outcome go the way that you want it to. What I'm giving you is 3 moves for keeping your soul intact while the institution does what it does. This is terrain-based survival. This is hardcore and at ease in the hardest possible version of that phrase. So your first move is to name the terrain. Don't fight the map. The most damaging thing that you can do in a wilderness situation is spend your energy trying to solve it with tools that weren't built for it. Most of the damage to leaders that I see in these situations doesn't come from the accusation itself. It comes from this place of being frantic, being exhausted. It's an identity depleting effort to fight an unwinnable fight with the wrong weapons. When you can correctly identify what kind of problem you're in, then it is easier to stop wasting resources on approaches that actually cannot work. You stop drafting the perfect email that's going to change everything. You stop rehearsing that conversation that's finally going to make them understand. And you redirect that energy to the one thing that's actually in your control, which is, who are you while this is happening? Naming the terrain doesn't mean giving up. It means fighting smart. The second move here in this wilderness situation is to find your one person, not a team, not a committee, not a group chat. I am talking about one person who can hold the full weight of the truth with you without flinching, without advising, without needing to resolve things before they can just be present with you. I had that person in my battle buddy. He picked me up every morning. He waited outside in the car. He made sure that I changed into the right uniform. We didn't discuss all of the details of what was happening, and we didn't need to. All I needed was to know that I was not completely alone. And I want to be honest with you about that morning. When I stood at that open car door and I genuinely considered going back upstairs and not coming back down, it wasn't a crisis sense, but it was just in the way that the wilderness erodes you slowly. And the wrong uniform was one small piece of proof that I was losing ground. I was so deflated by making just this simple mistake, a uniform, that it nearly ended the day before it even started. I only had a few days left. Because when the wilderness has been winning long enough, it's not the hard things that can break you. It's a small thing that you got wrong. For someone who always gets the small things right, That uniform was evidence. It was evidence that the terrain was taking something from me that I couldn't get back by performing harder. My battle buddy waited, and that was enough. You need that person, not someone who's going to fix it, not someone who's going to tell you it'll be okay, not someone who's going to give you a pep talk. Just someone who will be with you and wait. If you have that person, then please protect that relationship with everything that you have. And if you don't have that person, finding them is your most important leadership task right now. It's not the next goal or deliverable or performance level. It's just one person. The third move to make it through this terrain is to separate your performance from your identity. Yes, this is a challenge. I want you to keep performing. Not because it will save you. I've told you that clearly in the wilderness situation, it does not guarantee an outcome. Performance in the wilderness does not guarantee an outcome. But keep performing because you are not the accusation. Your standards are yours. They exist independent of what the investigation concludes. They existed before the situation started, and they will exist after it ends. The moment that you let your performance become hostage to the outcome of something that you can't control, that's when you've given wilderness something that it did not earn. So show up, do the work, not to prove anything to the institution. The institution doesn't care. It's to prove something to yourself, that whatever this takes from you, it doesn't get to take your standards. And here's the honest truth about how wilderness situations end or don't end. There is no clean resolution. Sometimes the institution clears you, and sometimes it just moves on. Sometimes the person who accused you never changes their mind. Sometimes the investigation concludes, and life continues from there. The question's not whether you get the outcome you deserve. The question is whether you come out of it still recognizing yourself. Whether your standards are intact. Whether your identity as a leader survived the terrain. This is what you can control. And the only thing that you can control. And that is exactly enough. I do have an assignment for you today as we're talking about moving through wilderness terrain. So here's what I want you to do. Assignment 1 is to get out a piece of paper or open your notes app, whichever kind of digital or analog person you are. Write down the last time someone defined you by something that was not true. A person, a system, a process, maybe a rumor or a performance review that you know missed the mark. When that happened, what did you do with your standards? Did you hold them? Did you outsource them to the accusation? Did you let what they said about you start to become how you show up? There's no judgment in the answer. This is your own exercise to do. I want you to honestly look at what happened to you in that season, because that awareness is where everything else starts. Your second assignment is to name your one person, first and last name. If you could name them immediately, I want you to reach out to them this week and tell them what they mean to you. Not a whole bunch of details, not the story. Just say, you are my one person, and I deeply appreciate you, and I don't know that I've ever told you that. If you cannot name them, if you're kind of sitting with the question and you're coming up empty, then that is your actual assignment. Work on finding that one person and make sure that you know in your heart that you can lean on them when you find yourself in the wilderness. Now, assignment 3, the next time you are in a situation that feels unwinnable, and it will happen probably sooner than you want, ask yourself one question before you do anything else. Is this a solvable problem, or is this wilderness terrain? Answer that question first, because everything else depends on the answer. If it's a solvable problem, my friend, it might be tough, but you're going to be all right. If you're in wilderness, that is a whole different playing field. What you know now is that false accusation is not a performance problem. It's not proof that you failed or you didn't work hard enough or that you should have done something differently. When 3 of the 5 wilderness markers are present, No map, no training manual, double bind, success metrics, collapsing, and moral dissonance. You are in uncharted territory. And that's a category of situation. It's not a verdict on your character. Naming it, recognizing that you're in wilderness changes everything about how you respond to it. Let's talk about who you're becoming through this process, because your identity as a leader is not housed in what the institution decides about you. It is not housed in whether or not you get cleared, whether the person believes you, or whether the outcome is even fair. It is housed in what you decide about yourself while the institution is still deliberating. The leaders who come through wilderness situations intact are not the ones who got lucky with the outcome. They're the ones who decided somewhere in the middle of it that the accusation didn't get to define them. That decision is available to you right now. You don't have to wait for that resolution. And why this matters? Because mission-driven leaders like us are not defined by whether the system is fair. Newsflash, systems are rarely fair. We know this. We have known this. And what defines us is whether or not we keep our standards when they're not. Whether we hold our identity when the institution is trying to rewrite it. Whether we come out the other side still recognizing ourselves and still capable of showing up for the people that count on us. That is the whole game. That is what hardcore and at ease is in its most essential form. Keep your edge, even when the system has you, especially then. And that's the framework for today. That's where I'm going to leave the teaching today. Before I close out, let me tell you what's coming up next on hardcore and at ease. And I want to give you one more thing that I don't want you to walk away without. You know what I still think about sometimes? That morning with the wrong uniform? Not with shame. I've made a lot of peace with that story. I think about it because it was the most honest moment of that entire stretch. Every other day, I managed to keep the mask on. It was so hard to get up, get out of bed. And that morning, for about 90 seconds, staring at an open car door, I didn't. The wilderness showed itself. I think about the leaders in your life right now who are in that 90 seconds, who are standing at that open door, who've been wearing a mask long enough that just a simple thing like the wrong uniform or a missed deadline, a small mistake that can be so unlike them, it can just put them over the edge. And you might not know what's happening. And they might not even tell you. They may have been ordered to tell no one. So I want to encourage you, my ambitious friend, to go be the battle buddy. When you recognize that somebody is off their game, they might be experiencing things in their lives that you have no idea about. And that is the others over self move right there. It's not a grand gesture. It's just waiting and walking with them. Now, if today's episode landed somewhere real for you, if you recognized yourself in the double bind, in the hollow performance, or in my wrong uniform moment, I do want to talk to you. I don't have a magic fix, but I want to talk because navigating wilderness is exactly what we do at Mission Ambition, and you don't have to figure out the terrain alone. Reach out to my team at info@missionambition.org, and let's talk about what you're actually looking like as you move through and how to do this with your identity intact. Now, next week on Hardcore and Eddies, we're back with a guest episode. We're going to look at what leading through change requires. When the uncertainty isn't temporary, this is just how we do things. So that's episode 38, dropping next Tuesday as usual. So until then, stay hardcore, be at ease, and trust the process.
You're listening to Hardcore and at Ease. Keep the conversation going at join.othersoverself.com.